Thanks for joining us for another episode of Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. Each week, Coach Ben and Coach Kyle share their insights, interview special guests, and offer some extra words of wisdom. The victory is ours, because we've already won.
Welcome to Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. I'm your host, Ben Wildman, aka The Wildcat, and I'm joined in Season 2, yet again, by the Mad Dog. Kyle Apps, how you doing?
Season 2 in blue. This is the first episode. Welcome back, friends.
So good. And guys, remember that God has given us the victory. So remember, whatever you do, do not quit. Remember, this podcast is around how you as a Christian can use sports as a great tool in this victory, whether you're a player, a coach, or a fan. And in Season 2, Kyle, we are going to have a coach focus, and we're going to have some different tools and tips. Hey, are you enjoying the world of sport? We're at the Champions League final.
Borussia Dortmund. Okay. Anyways, I'm almost bored out. Time to get outside, people. After you listen to the podcast, go outside.
There we go. Love it. Well, look, Season 2, coach focus. And if we got a great guest today, Kyle, introduce the listeners to who we've got today. This is a big, big name. Who have we got on the Already Won podcast?
We're starting at the top. We're going top. We're going Charlie Ward Jr., Coach Ward, Heisman Trophy winner, NCAA College Football National Championship winner with the Florida State University Seminoles.
Just on that, I mean, so let me get this right. So the Heisman is, just for British listeners and elsewhere, the Heisman Trophy is basically the best American football player, right? Yep. And so he won that, and yet he didn't go into the NFL. He played 11 seasons in the NBA, right? And made it to the NBA Finals. Is that correct?
He did the Heisman Trophy, won the national championship. He almost won the NCAA basketball. He was also a baseball player. I mean, to win the Heisman Football Award and not play professional football is unheard of. He's the only person to do it, as you said, to go play basketball.
And he's also been drafted at MLB baseball. So this is an all-round.
He could have been my neighbor. He was drafted by the Brewers.
There we go. What could have been? But he's going to talk about how God's led him on his journey. So a lot of times you may have heard about his journey and what could have happened, right? There's people that said, he could replace, Joe Montana, things like that if he played football. Now, whatever happens, he's going to talk about how God's led him on his journey. But Mad Dog, look, the guy now, okay, let me just read out this. He's a man of integrity. He's a motivational speaker. He's, like we said, a Heisman Trophy winner. He's been an NBA athlete, but he's also now a coach and a mentor. So now he runs his own foundation with his wife, and we're going to speak about that, about how he's now trying to help many people as a coach and help them holistically as well. So we're looking forward to dive into some of these things as well, right?
Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's welcome to the Already Won podcast, Charlie Ward. Hey, Charlie, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming on and giving up your time. All right, so first question then. As a Christian, what does the phrase already won mean to you?
Already won. As a Christian, that means that no matter what I've done in life, God has already given me a victory by shedding his blood on the cross, or his son's blood on the cross for my sins. And so the victory that I will win in the end will be eternity with him. And so when I have a heavenly mindset, thought process, that is a win long term. In short term, it gives me hope to continue to move forward, to know that regardless of what is going on in my life, God has already allowed me to win. And through his presence in my life, I'm able to analyze all the positives and negatives and keep them in focus to be able to glorify him for that win.
It's great. Yep, that's it. I mean, our podcast has already won, and we want to make sure that people are aware of that, because I think sometimes the victory is out of hand, but it's not. As a Christian, we know that Christ has defeated death and sin. So let's go back to 1993. You played football, basketball. You're a legend. People can read your story. You're featured in many different sportcasts since you entered the draft, since you played basketball, since you did all your sports. But how involved, when you were making decisions back in 1993, when you won the Heisman, the NCAA, the national championship with Florida State. How involved were your parents, your coaches, in some of your decisions with baseball, with basketball, with football?
Well, when I was making a decision for, I guess, the next phase of my life after college, um, it was not a hard decision because while I was in college, my senior year, I was really focused on finishing. And during football season, I was working on trying to be the best that I could be as a football player while graduating from college as well. And then once the basketball season came around, I wasn't going to give up my senior year as a basketball player to go and just focus on the NFL. And so that was a decision that was made, way before any thought process of, next steps. And so I made that decision to go and be a senior leader on the basketball team while also give myself an option to play in the NBA to get more film and those types of things. And that was my goal, was to be able to have options once I finished college with my degree, as well as, football, basketball, and I was even drafted in the Major League Baseball. Also, while also being drafted as Canadian football player. And so I had multiple options coming out of college, which is what, every college student would like to have, if that is their desire, to have multiple options for next steps in their journey to young adulting. And that was my decision. And during that time, there were some things that I had to give up, which was I didn't focus fully on the NFL draft because I wanted to keep my options open. And I was a senior leader on the basketball team, as I mentioned. So it was it was challenging in the sense that I didn't know what my future held when it came to the NFL. As being named one of the top football players in college, that wasn't my issue. My issue was I wanted to do what was best for me during that time, and that was to be on the basketball team, and then allow God to make close and open doors or make situations right after the fact. And I thought it was the right thing to do by going out and playing basketball and being a senior leader, guard, just like I was the quarterback on the football team as a senior leader. And I want to do the same thing for my basketball team. So that was my focus. And, when we make decisions in life, we have to be willing to live with whatever the results are. And I was willing to live with the result of not being drafted in NFL due to my decision to go and play basketball my senior year. So have no regrets there. And, I went through the process of, a person who missed the combine. I talked to when they got physicals and those types of things with the NFL teams, and did a pro day on campus, talked to some teams, but they sensed that I wasn't 100% bought in to the NFL process, which I was not. I was keeping my options open, and I showed up for pro day looking like I was preparing for basketball, which I was. And I was like 5'11" a quarter and 180 something pounds at that time. And that was something, I had to live with. But I did prepare for the NFL Pro Day. But my prayer was, God, please open the door and close the door. And during that time, when the NFL draft came around, I did make a statement early on as well that kind of shared that I wasn't 100% committed. But that statement was that if I didn't get drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, then I would, be considering my other options. Um, it was a bold statement, but it was a true statement, um, nonetheless. And so no one felt like I was worth a first round draft pick during that time. And, no one, and the Kansas City Chiefs actually called me in the fifth round to see if I was interested in being drafted and potentially coming to camp. And I told them that I couldn't guarantee them that I would come to camp if I got drafted in the fifth round, which was true, because if I would have gotten drafted in the first round of the NBA draft, then I would be going to play in the NBA. And that was just a statement that I made. It was a bold statement, but it was a faith statement and trusting that God was going to place me where He needed me to be and open those doors. And lo and behold, that's what happened. When it was all said and done, a lot of hard work, a lot of people working on my behalf to get me to the place that God had called me to be. And I was grateful for, that journey. Fortunately for me, I didn't get an opportunity to be drafted in the NFL or play in the NFL, but I got an opportunity to be drafted in the NBA, and I played 11 years, which was a great blessing for the opportunity that the New York Knicks gave me in the first round of the NBA 94 NBA draft, which when I made the decision to play basketball my senior year, I had no clue that I was a first round draft pick. And so that's just, how God works when you put your faith and trust in Him and allow Him to move you, because the things that you don't know and can't see is definitely a testament of having a relationship with Him and allowing your faith to move you in the direction that you feel is best suited long term. And so sometimes we see it and we want it, but we see it as a long, long ways away, and we have to count that cost to are we wanting and willing to put the work and time and energy into going that journey, because the journey can seem very long and scary. But when we trust God, He will provide, in due season.
It's great. So your journey has been long. You're still on it. You've transitioned into leading and coaching. Can you tell us about when you made decisions early on, from high school to college to pros? What coaches, parents, what did they say, or did you have good advice, or maybe there was not so good advice? So how did the role of coaches and parents play in some of your decisions?
Yes, I had quite a few coaches that during my journey, when I was working to make those decisions. Of course, my mom and dad were instrumental in just helping me with the agents while I was playing basketball. Of course, during that time, you couldn't have an agent. And so they were interviewing agents while I was playing basketball to see who I could potentially, be represented by. Had Coach Eggman Williamson, who was one of my basketball coaches. He took to me and helped me train for the NBA combines, as well as helping me get onto the circuit, in a sense, the Nike circuit, and just being a great advocate for me. And for, football, I really was just out there. I had a guy that I talked to, an agent wise, that was helping me through and to understand that whole piece. But when they didn't see me as a first round pick, the football portion of it was kind of moved on, in a sense, because they didn't. I made a statement, and a lot of organizations didn't see me as a first round pick during that time. So they knew that it was going to be a challenge for me to play football, or at least me to look at my other options. And so those are, you know, those were some of the things that I had to navigate through. But when it's all said and done, you know, it's just great to be able to have people to speak into my life, and also help me in the process to be able to get to where I was looking to go. And I didn't go to any big training facilities back during that time. It was not that big of a deal like it is today, where you go in these different areas where they specifically prepare you for, you know, the combines. I missed all of that because I was playing basketball. And then once I finished, you know, I would go out and throw with my teammates, football wise. And then basketball wise, I was working with Coach Williamson in the gym to get prepared for, you know, the combines. And I was afforded opportunity to be at the NABC All-Star game that year. And so that was, you know, a great blessing to be a part of that, being a football guy mainly. And then, you know, my whole goal and mission was to be able to compete at a high level, or just compete with those guys who've been playing basketball full time in those combines and all-star games and those types of things. So, you know, coaches, a lot of coaches, like I mentioned, those coaches were spoken to my life as far as, you know, what's next. And I'm sure the football coaches spoke to some of the pro scouts and GMs and those organizations about me as a football player. But they all got the sense that I was going to keep my options open, especially if I wasn't drafted in the first round. But even if I was drafted in the first round, then I would have gone and played in the NFL, which that wasn't the sentiment, you know, of the group, because they didn't see me as a first round draft pick.
Great. I mean, you've mentioned some of your coaches there. I know you've had a lot of amazing coaches over the years. Pat Riley, Bobby Bowden, Jeff Van Gundy, to name a few. What do you see as a good coach? What makes a good coach? Now you're coaching now. What makes a good coach for you?
One that's prepared, organized, has structure, you know, rules and regulations. I mean, we all need guidelines, boundaries, those types of things. Also able to communicate the plan of action, not just to the coaches, but to the team. Set roles for the players. Part of the plan, you know, of being a good coach is getting guys to buy into their roles, or getting a player to buy into their roles, because that's very key to the success of any program or any relationship, is understanding your role. And once you understand your role, you have to be a star in that role. And if you fight being a star in your role, then that's where you have a lot of ascension. And, you know, you're not connected, and it causes, you know, things to go awry. But being able to make adjustments as well, not being so stubborn to your philosophy, but also being able to make adjustments to the plan of action, whatever your plan may be. I think that's a great coach, finds ways to make adjustments during the game, as well as, you know, in personnel. You know, from year to year, you may have to adjust what you like doing to fit what's best for that group. And, you know, that's something I've learned from a lot of coaches, both positive and negative, because some coaches are just so set on it has to be a certain way. But times have changed and people change, and you may have to find a way to get the best out of that group or that player. And how you do it may be different. And it may not even be you. It may be one of your assistants that you may have to get to speak to a player to help get him motivated or moving. And so you just have to be willing to do whatever it is. And I know a lot of my coaches, you talk about Jeff, he was my skill development coach. Jeff Van Gundy was my skill development coach my rookie year and part of my second year. And once, you know, he was the skill development coach, and then all of a sudden he became the head coach. Now, you know, his role changed. And so I had to go and start working with, you know, someone else. And, you know, one of those guys eventually was Mike Malone, believe it or not, who's the coach with the Denver Nuggets now. So, I mean, that is just part of, you know, the job. You work with a guy for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden his role changes, and now he's not able to work with you because he has different responsibilities. And there are other guys who, you know, you work with, you know, after that. That's just the way I've learned. And Greg Popovich was another great role model and mentor. I was only there for 6 months, but just the way he treated every player, you know, every player was treated the same way. Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, they got the same tongue lashing that everyone else got. You know, when it came down to how are we going to improve and how can you improve and make the team better, to me that spoke volumes to, you know, just the culture, the relationship, and they understood that that's just the way, you know, he was, and he went about his business. And I think, of course, he's probably changed, but I don't think he's changed to the point where he doesn't pour into the best player. And that's one thing that I've learned is, you know, I've been in all those roles. I've been the best player, I've been a backup, and I've also been a guy who sat on the bench with no hope to getting in the game at any given point, because, you know, as long as those guys are healthy that's in front of you, you know, you weren't going to get an opportunity to play. But you had to be a great teammate. Even though you might have been frustrated, you had to continue to put in the work. And so just understanding all those roles plays a big part. And those coaches poured a lot into me in those roles because sometimes they didn't speak to me. And I was wondering, like, you know, why aren't they speaking to me? You know, what am I doing when I was the last guy on the bench? And so that's, you know, that was frustrating, but it was something I learned as well. And it helps me as a coach to be able to share that with those players that are in that role, for them to understand that this is your role. I mean, your role is to be a great teammate during the games, and then in practice, give us the best look, you know, the best look that you could possibly give us. And so we all have roles in different times. And just like Coach Van Gundy, his role changed in the middle of the year. That's the same way our role can change. And so we just have to be prepared and ready for those opportunities.
I hear that Coach Greg Popovich, he doesn't use a phone, and he spends times having meals with players. Is that right? Does he spend a lot of time connecting around food and things like that?
Yes, he is a wine connoisseur as well, so he likes that portion of it. And yes, he spends time with players, you know, one-on-one, getting to know them, which is one of his strengths. I'm still learning that aspect. I work to try to do that as well. And, you know, it may not be as often, but just trying to get to know the players in their element.
Yeah, I mean, that's so good. I mean, I know you've been an assistant coach. You mentioned assistant coaches with the Houston Rockets. You've been an assistant coach, and you're now a high school coach, and you've coached after. A lot of people know you for, you know, 11 years in the NBA, reaching the NBA finals. But what about after you've played? So your coaching journey. Tell us about, you've mentioned how you've took things from your coaches. How do you coach now? So you say about getting to know players. How are you a coach now? What's your coaching philosophy now as you coach?
My coaching philosophy is essentially is to coach the whole child. And what I mean by that is, basketball is what I coach, but the decisions that they make on the court, off the court, helps, teach a lesson, and, teach a lesson, whatever that lesson is. We try to put it into real life terms. So, for instance, if a guy is late to practice, we talk about, being late to work. When you're a young adult or when you're an adult, these are decisions that we have to make. What does being on time look like? When you make a mistake, owning up to that mistake, not blaming your teammate or blaming someone else, but owning your part. What does being a great teammate look like? Communication is very, very important, and everything. And when there's miscommunication, things go awry. You're not on the same page, and that happens in relationships. Whatever type of relationships you have is no different than having that type of relationship on your team. We also do some, literacy, education as well. We bring in speakers from different walks of life, different businesses, to pour into the young men, to help encourage them. And so we work to try to coach the whole child. We do, we call them current events. We have sports site. The current events are just like what we used to have when I was a little kid in elementary and middle school. You bring in whatever the current event, and you had to discuss it and talk about it, what it meant to you. And so we do that through some of the sports articles and different things that come up. And we have our guys talk through, best practices for decision making. Because if someone has, done something in the news that we're all aware of, from an athletic standpoint, we want to make sure we talk through those. Like the speeding, we've had that numerous times. So bringing that up to talk about the importance of, driving safely, because, there are people being killed, and the athlete sometimes gets off, and sometimes, athlete is, in danger, to go into prison or, putting himself and his family in difficult situations. And so we talk to them about those things. And that's really our philosophy, is that, like I mentioned, to coach the whole child, as a player. And because I mentioned, we talked about sports psychology. We added that to the mix this year. But that was very important for them outside of basketball, to be able to think through different situations, and, help them from that mental approach as well. And sometimes they might not understand it, but that's no different than us. As we grew, we started to understand what our parents were saying about certain things, because we started to encounter those things. And at that time when they told us, we were like, oh, they're old and they don't know, and whatever the case may be. But as we continue to mature and grow, what they shared was very similar to what we're seeing today, because we've had those experiences, and it's a cycle, but we never know. There's reason why we want to be able to share all this information with them, is so they would know. They can't say they did know. They hadn't been told that if you drive, 80 miles per hour in a 45 mile per hour zone, there's possibility that you may get in trouble in some form or fashion. And so just them understanding that part of it, they can't say they did know. And so we want to make sure that we talk about and talk through all those situations and just get their thought process on it, and how they think about making decisions is very, very important as well.
Yeah, that's important. I think that's something that comes not by reading or writing. It's an experience that you've gone through. So now you're busy with your family. You're still coaching, speaking, leading the Ward Family Foundation. You find yourself in a position like this. You're a leading Christian athlete who can evangelize, disciple, as you said, lead the whole child, build the whole child. So when did your faith perspective change? When did it change your outlook and perspective change from moving from performance and glory into more as Christian? How can I glorify God through my abilities? How can I glorify God through my actions?
Well, I was raised in the church, gave my life to the Lord when I was 10 years old. And of course, once you do that, your journey changes. And I was, my freshman year in high school, I had a knee injury that helped, me to understand that sports is something that can be taken away from you really, really fast. And that helped build my faith to not depend on one thing. And that was one way. Of course, I was young, like I said, ninth grade at the time, and I didn't understand at all why. Didn't question, God to the point where, I was deep down in depression. But my parents did a great job of putting people around me to help me to better deal with the situation of not having sports in my life, because that's what I wanted to do. And I had to go and find other ways to be able to have an impact, make an impact, or be a part of the group or the teams that I was supposed to be a part of during that time. It was a challenge, but nonetheless, I was able to overcome that knee injury, but it was a long journey. It kept, the first year I heard it, ended up having surgery that summer. It happened in, the last basketball game of freshman year. That summer, I ended up having surgery to try to help repair it. And then that following football year, I was the punter and played a little bit during the football year. I had no major issues doing football. And then when football season's over, was preparing for the basketball season in like December, January, first part of January. I went up for a layup and I came down on my knee. And when I was walking out, my knee buckled, locked up on me, and I knew that something was wrong again. And so I ended up missing my sophomore year of varsity basketball. And I had to sit there and watch the guys compete each and every day and game. And that was very tough. But my dad, as I mentioned, did a great job. My parents did a great job of helping me through that process. But during that time, I was able to find my academic part of my life. And I was, I ended up winning third place in the science fair because I did a science project on my knee injury. Ended up winning third place, and so that was very helpful to understand, that the whole body, not the whole body, but especially the knee portion, and it helped me find my academic place, because that was not on my radar. It was on my radar, but it was far down the scale. And so I had to push that to the forefront. And it was a great blessing for me because it helped me to understand that I could be a scholar athlete. But even then, I was doing everything I could just to get by from an academic standpoint, going through high school. And that challenge helped me to grow as an individual spiritually, because I had to lean on my faith during that time. And prayer was a big key to my healing. And that journey helped me to develop and grow in my relationship with the Lord, to know that the only way that I was only going to be able to make it was through His grace, His mercy, and His healing. And I was able to be healed doing that for that, because at one point they thought that it was a bone tumor. And we were grateful that it turned out not to be that. And as I continue to grow, when I went to college, as I mentioned, I grew up in the church. So the seed was always there, and God had always placed me around people. So Coach Bowden was a great role model. Coach Mark Rick, Coach John Eason, pretty much all the coaching staff, they had a relationship with the Lord in some form of fashion. So it was very beneficial for us as players to be in that type of environment. And then FCA was there, and the challenges that we face in college. When you have a relationship with the Lord, it makes life a little bit easier, because you know that part of the things that you go through in life are part of God's plan for your life. We just have to understand and know what the lesson that He's trying to teach us is. And so being able to have and understand that portion of it is always a great blessing, to know that, regardless of what you're going through, God is always there to help you through it, through scripture, through other people, through prayer. And, my life was no different. I was enjoying college. My freshman year as a punter, didn't understand why I was losing a year of eligibility to punt, but God saw fit for me to understand that role, because that was what was best for the team. And I played basketball my second year. God allowed Coach Bowden to allow me to go out and play basketball full time in October. And I didn't have to report or go back to football the rest of that year, which was a great blessing looking back. And my junior year, I struggled mightily as a quarterback. Threw a lot of interceptions, and got booed, got benched, all those things. But when it was all said and done, and I look back over my time, because I didn't like doing interviews. I didn't like being the leader of the head honcho or guy that everyone looked at as the main guy on the football team. That I didn't want that. I just wanted to play my role and be in the background. But God was like, "Hey, I'm putting you here for a reason, and putting you in this position for a reason." And I never understood it at that time quite clearly until really afterwards, or after college. Like, I put you in that position because I wanted you to be a mouthpiece or glorify me, through it all. And I put you on this pedestal. And so a lot of times, yes, the press and those types of people write articles about you, and whether they're both positive or negative, they write them. But it's all about, glorify God and giving Him the glory through it all, and being able to also be a connector. I didn't understand that part of it at the time, but now I see it more and more of how He's connecting me with other people, and He's given me a name to be able to connect people. And He's, gone with me through my challenges and my success to be able to help me to connect people. And so I think the biggest thing is, staying in a place of being humble, and in a place where you understand and know that you're part of a bigger mission, bigger cause than yourself, and not putting yourself in the place of God, because as we know, when we do that, that's when we start to crumble. It's called pride.
Amen. So powerful. Thanks so much for sharing all those things. Charlie, look, your journey has been a journey about embracing the process. And you talk about being productive during the process, and how there's not instant success. For coaches and players, have you got any last bit of advice for those listening around them in their world of sport? And how can people follow you now? So with your foundation and your ministry now. So a bit of advice and then a little bit about how people can follow you and what you're doing now.
Our expectations of life in life, kind of set our standards on how we go about doing our business. And so, we have high expectations. Our standards should be high. We got to put the work in to make sure that we're meeting those expectations. In college, our expectations every year was to win a national championship. And if that is our expectation, then, we had to have the process in place. We had to put the work and the time in to make sure that came to fruition. And so if you have low expectations, then, most people work towards those expectations. Like if you don't expect anything, most times you don't work hard. You just think everything's okay. And you don't push past comfortable. Some people do, but most people don't if they have low expectations, and that's in anything. And so we always talk about, expectations set our standards. And so our foundation, my wife and I, we established a foundation, our family foundation 3 years ago, but we've been doing foundation work for like 25 plus years. We've been married for 28, 29 in August. And so we've been doing mission work, here in the States, as well as, abroad in different regions of the countries throughout our time. And our whole goal and mission is to do what God has called us to do, which is, help support life, encourage people to dream, and work towards building, champions for life. A lot of times we get rewards for, an event, a medal, but sometimes the reward is just going through the experience. What do you learn from those experiences that you have throughout that process? And so right now, our family foundation, we've been doing some work. We support our community. We support youth character development through the arts, education, wellness. And that's our mission. And we also do some support. We support disaster relief as well. And so anything lined up with youth character development, we're there to help support. And we're currently in the planning phase of looking to build a sports and family youth and family sport education and wellness facility. Sorry, it's not a facility, it's a campus. And we're looking to do it as a partnership model with other nonprofit and for-profit entities to bring all of them to one campus, to where we have a one-stop shop for the community to be able to have a gathering place. And we're working to have corporations and everyone be a part of it as well. And it's a big, huge undertaking. But nonetheless, when it's something huge that we can't do, then that means when we're part of a faith journey, it's, that's that God piece that we are trusting that he's given us this vision to be able to have this collaboration of organizations and people on one campus to help uplift their community. Then we know that he's going to provide the resources. And I'm a big believer that, whatever we have in our hearts, God will honor our heart. And, our heart is to have a collaboration and do it for the right reasons. Then we know that God's going to honor that in some form or fashion. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen like right now. We're praying that it does. And it moves fast. but we also know that it may not. But we have to continue to climb that mountain because he's given us this vision. And we've seen tremendous progress. People have stepped up to help support us in a lot of different ways. And so we're grateful for that. And like I mentioned, our foundation, we have a mentor leadership camp that we do during Father's Day for the fathers and their kids, mentor and mentees. And we also do a holiday clinic as well. And we're doing a shoe drive for the local Pop Warner organization here in town, where we give out cleats and cheer shoes to that group, and we're collecting donations for that right now. And we have a breakfast that we're started doing to help support our foundation. And we also partner with some STEAM partners here as well to be able to do some STEAM programming information. And so our foundation, like I mentioned, anything youth character development, we give scholarships, help with scholarships for basketball camps, and donations to organizations that may need support for kids, for programming, to be able to have a lot of things that we were afforded as kids, and also our kids as well. So you can find us. You can go to charlieward.org to see what we're doing, and that will give you a better glimpse at some of the things that we're doing for the community, as well as the people relationships that we built over the years in our other areas.
Fantastic. Well, I always say where there's vision, there's provision. So we pray for that provision. We've heard about that vision, such a broad way that you're supporting so many. And, it's inspirational hearing someone who had the platform, like you say, to give back in this way. So we pray for you. We'll continue to pray for your ministry, that God will bless it and provide in that way. And I know the way you spoke about some of those coaches that impacted you, I know that in the future, many people may talk about you in that way, so we'll keep praying for you. But thank you so much for your time, Coach Ward, today, and keep doing all the great stuff that you're doing as well.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me, and all the best to you and your ministry.
Mad dog. That was good. A lot of great stuff there, right, around coaching, about being more than a coach, and a lot of similarities with our sports friends, right? We train. We talk about the heart of a champion, right? Trying to train, transformation from the inside out, and he was talking about those lessons, making it real life, about being late and driving in a car. We've had a whole last season around teachable moments, right? What things stood out for you? I mean, just hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, he talked about, as a coach, as leaders, he tries to develop the whole child.
Yeah, I mean, as a high performer, a lot of high performers say this. He talks about taking responsibility, not blaming. I've heard a lot of professional athletes talk about that. And a lot of other things he spoke about really resonates with us, right? About, his expectations and about trying to set those standards. But I also loved, someone who's a little bit older in years, who's able to look back on his life. And as a Christian, say, that is why God took me through that. That's why he took me through injury. That's why, a lot of people, he won the Heisman trophy, but yet he never played pro football. He played NBA. Why did God do that? Now, he can look back at that and think, actually, God had a plan and a purpose for me. Now, that's something that we can't see when you're going through it. So maybe if you're playing now, or if you're coaching, you don't understand, why is God taking you through this? Well, we just heard there from Coach Ward, it does make sense when you get a little bit older. And he spoke about how, the things that his parents used to tell him, once he got to a point, he then became a parent, like more than a coach to others as well, right? So I think that's really encouraging for our coaches, right? Hearing this.
And to make something out of, make something good out of something bad. Remember his knee. He blew out his knee. And instead of getting all down the dumps and deflated and just giving up, what did he do? He did a school project on that, found a whole different gifting of science and different things, and got third place he's injured, getting third place in the science project. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's amazing.
Yeah. And now I guarantee, look, he's running his foundation. He's doing all this stuff. He's not just doing coaching. He's doing other things. And maybe that was a time when he, was able to do that. So, he's helping holistically. You talked about the 4-corner plus model. We talk about how a coach can impact and help change and transform a young person technically, one of the corners physically, psychologically. He said in the last year, he's added that component. And then socially, and obviously we say the most important thing is the plus.
He said it too.
He said it, and he mentioned coaches that, all those other coaches, those big names. Now, they were important, but what about those other coaches who are Christians who helped him? He talked about a ministry that got alongside of him as he was a student. So this is really, really great for us to hear that insight. Maybe you don't hear that on mainstream media, but on the Already Won podcast, the thing that I took out of it, and we took out of it, and hopefully our listeners, is that there are other people that have influenced him, his parents, his coaches, maybe not the big name coaches, but have helped form him as a professional athlete. And now as a leader in his ministry, now he's impacting people in a holistic way. And I think that's really encouraging for us as people who train coaches to do exactly that. And maybe we're going to hear now from a coach, one of our staff, and going to hear a bit more about that.
We're going to hear from Coach Solo in Nigeria, who's one of our leading basketball kind of coaches, and we'll hear his perspective.
Yeah, I'm Solomon Palm, a sports friend staff, a coach, basketball coach. My involvement with Church Center Sports Ministry has been really wonderful. Church Center Sports Ministry actually helped in sponsoring most of our programs, both basketball, football here in Jos. And one of the stories with my church just get engaged in the inter-church football sports ministry, and that has grown. Even they go a long way supporting the players with their tuition fees, universities, and there's a particular player, Yiltok, that couldn't even have, his parents cannot afford his school fees, but the church actually stepped in for him, and he's now back in school. He's in 200 level now. Yeah, Sports Friends, Church Center Sports Ministry help churches to do sports ministry.
Love that, Mad Dog. I love that. I mean, great to hear from Solomon in Nigeria, West Africa. Fantastic. Are we going to finish? I mean, I did give Coach Ward a bit of Wellman's Weekly Wisdom. I said, where there's vision, there's provision. Do you like that one?
He smirked. I saw it. I mean, he kind of gave you a little bit. Okay.
I do like this quote as well. He talked about expectations. We rise to not the height of our hopes, but we rise to the height and levels of our training. And that's something that we say within Sports Friends. You can have all these hopes, but you don't rise to those hopes and dreams. You rise to those levels of training and expectation. And he's someone who's trained really hard as a professional athlete and now as a coach. So loads of stuff there for people to go back, take notes, and go back over, right? So much wisdom.
Not just a coach, it's just a player, but everything. I mean, as a Christian, his life embodies whatever journey you're on. You could be a player, you could be the coach, you could be the team owner. I don't know. But everything that he said as a Christian was just spot on. So
good. Well, Mad Dog, look, season 2 has begun. What a way to start season 2. We've set the bar. We've set there we go. 2 blue. The bar is high. Are we going to keep raising the bar? That's the question.
Fireworks are saying yes. All thumbs point to yes. Boom.
There we go. Well, we're excited for our next guest. But what do we do, Kyle, to finish off? What do we do?
You know what we're going to do? We're going to tell your friends. Tell your friends' friends. But don't forget about your parents and your parents' friends. In fact, tell everybody we already won.
Already won, people. See you next episode.
Thanks again for joining us on Already Won, a Sports Friends podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform.